guys, welcome back to part 2 of the Twisted Siblings podcast. I'm Charlotte.
And I'm Kelly. Today we're going to be talking about Joanna Dennehy. Have you heard of Joanna Dennehy?
I actually haven't, so I'm quite excited to hear about a story that that I don't know about, and I love listening to it when you tell the story. So yeah, really excited for this one, which sounds really weird. I'm excited to hear the story, not excited about the whole story, you know?
For what happened.
Yeah.
It's quite an interesting one actually, and it's quite twisty. There's lots of stuff that happens simultaneously, so I'll try to explain it as best I can. But yeah, she's definitely up there, I think, with some of the worst female killers definitely in the UK that we've had. So
I feel like female killers as well are just one that are not spoken about enough. And
no,
they always seem to be the worst.
I know, they always sort of go next level, don't they? But yes. So,
Okay.
are you ready?
Yeah, I'll let you do the talking. Go for it.
Okay, so Joanna Dennehy. I have also read her name as Joanna in some of the sources that I was looking at, but the police records called her Joanne, so I'm going to call her Joanne. She was born in August in 1982 in St Albans in Hertfordshire, which is in the UK. She had a normal, stable upbringing. Her mum, her dad and her sister. She was always described as a nice child. She did well at school and she had no problems until she sort of hit her teenage years when she began taking drugs and drinking alcohol. She then began taking part in petty crimes to pay for this lifestyle and ended up landing a sentence in juvenile detention centre for burglary. At the age of 15, she moved out of her family home and in with her then 20-year-old boyfriend, who was called John Trenner. They had 2 children together, and unfortunately their relationship didn't last very long. She was described by John as being very narcissistic. She was abusive. She would regularly self-harm. She was addicted to drugs, addicted to alcohol. It was a very tumultuous household. And after a few years, John left and took the children with him. So she was left homeless with nothing to her name and again started committing crimes. And in 2012, she was convicted of theft and sent to prison. Now, while she was in prison, she underwent psychological testing and was then diagnosed with an antisocial personality disorder. And she was described as also having psychopathic traits such as impulsivity, rage, violence, and anger. And at this time, she was prescribed an antipsychotic medication, which seemed to sort of help stabilise her moods. Not long afterwards, she was released from prison on probation, and instead of going back to St Albans, she moved to Peterborough and met somebody called Kevin Lee, who rented out properties in Peterborough to vulnerable people or people with sort of criminal history who would normally struggle to find accommodation. And it was from here that she would start her 10-day murder spree.
Oh my
So
gosh.
on the 19th of March 2013, she sent a text to a man called, now his name's Polish, so again I'm not great with pronunciation, so I think you say it Lucas Slabozowski.
That's actually a really good try. That sounds very Polish, so I would go with that.
Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure they will, but that's how I think it's said. So he had actually met Joanna sort of on the streets of Peterborough. I think he was sort of running in those circles, the like petty criminals or out drinking around in the streets. He had come over from Poland and he didn't really know anybody in this country. He didn't have any family and sort of befriended Joanna. So she messaged him and invited him round, not to her property, but it was actually to one of her landlord's empty properties. So I spoke earlier about Kevin, who was her landlord. He rented out properties to different people, but he also provided Joanne with some work and she would sort of help with some properties. And I've read in some sources that she would act as sort of like a bodyguard when he was trying to get rid of tenants who wouldn't pay their rent.
Oh,
so
okay.
I know, I think She sort of sums up a little bit of her character there.
Yeah.
That she would be used for that. But she messages Lucas and asks if he wants to come around for some drinks, and he does. He meets her at this property, and they spend the night drinking together. I think from what he believed, he thought that there was potential there for sort of a romantic relationship, and that's potentially why he went round. And Joanne played on this, and when she was there, she sort of put a blindfold on him and told him it was going to be some sort of game, possibly a sexual game. I'm not too sure of the ins and outs. But once he had the blindfold on, she stabbed him through the heart and left him to die.
Wow.
I know. So she quickly realises that she's unable to dispose of his body on her own. So this is where she calls in her friend. So his name is Gary Stretch, but he's known to all of his friends as Stretch. He's actually 7 feet 3 inches tall, so
Oh my
very
God.
recognisable.
Yes.
I know. Sort of like a giant. And he was absolutely besotted with Joanne. So he would have done absolutely anything for her, and he admits that later on. He comes to the property and brings another one of their friends with him called Leslie Layton. And when they get round, they try and decide what they're going to do with this body. So none of them have a car and none of them have a way to get rid of this body. So they decide their best course of action is just to put him in the wheelie bin outside the house.
These people just don't think things through, do they? Like, in what world do you think you can get away with that?
I know.
No one's going to notice a body in a wheelie bin.
Just pop it outside for bin collection.
Right?
It's crazy. Okay. But he's obviously not bothered because she is very pleased with herself, and she actually shows it to the 15-year-old neighbour as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Calls the neighbour round and shows her the body that's left outside. So during this time, she's trying to decide how they can take the body or get rid of the body from the wheelie bin and dispose of it somewhere else. So she actually contacts Kevin Lee, again, the landlord, and asks him to borrow some money so that she can buy a car. He lends her some money, she buys a car, and her and Gary go back to the house, take the body from the wheelie bin, and dispose of it in a ditch in a farmland just outside of Peterborough. And then just 9 days later, on the 28th of March, while she's at home, so Joanne lives in like a HMO, or a house of multiple occupants. So if you're not from the UK, you might not know, it's like a large house that has lots of people in it. Sometimes they have shared bathrooms, shared kitchens, but they all have their own bedrooms with locked doors. So she lives in one of those, and while she's there, she knocks on her neighbour's door, who's called John Chapman, and goes round for the evening drinking with him. So I think they were already friends and they'd spent sort of evenings together drinking before. But while she's round there, he and her are having quite a few drinks, and it gets to the point where he's drank so much he passes out drunk, and she decides she's going to kill again. So while he's asleep, she, with the same knife that she stabbed Lucas with, she stabs John through the chest 6 times. Now, I read in the article, which I don't know why I found this particularly chilling, because the whole story is chilling, but after she's killed him, she phones up Gary again, and she actually sings Britney Spears' song, Oops, I Did It Again, down the phone.
Right, okay, wow.
I just, like...
How do you find time to have, like, humour or find relatable songs in a situation like this? Like, it just goes to show that there's just no remorse, empathy. Something is switched off. Like, I did mention that before, but I think that's the only way to describe it. It's just, it has to be switched off, right?
Yeah, you must completely have to disassociate from it, because everybody else surely would be in complete panic.
Right.
It's not even a house that's completely on her own. There's other occupants that live in this house.
Yeah, like, did they not notice anything was going on? Like, I know obviously you said he had got drunk and he had passed out, but you would think that, like, feeling that, you might wake up and you might try and fight, and there might be like a scuffle, a struggle, and like there might be noise coming from a room. No one.
Nothing that was mentioned. I do know that one of the other occupants that live in that same house was Leslie Layton as well. So he was the guy that went with Gary to help get rid of Lucas's body. So he is obviously not going to be the best witness, but nobody else had mentioned anything. So again, both Joanne, Gary Stretch and Leslie Layton dispose of John's body, and they take it back to the same ditch that they'd got rid of Lucas's body. And clearly on a high from her 2 previous murders, Joanne only waits one more day to commit her next murder. So just one more day later, Joanne calls her landlord, Kevin Lee, and invites him round to her house. During the trial, we learn that Joanne and Kevin were actually having an affair with each other, and he had told friends that he was scared of Joanne, and that's because she had admitted to him that she had killed who we know now to be Lucas, although she didn't mention his name at the time. She just told him that she had killed a Polish immigrant. So whether or not he went round to see her or because he was scared, I don't know. But when he was round there, not long after he went in, she stabbed him again with the same knife she'd used to kill both Lucas and John. Left him to die on the floor, but this time she took his clothes off and redressed him in one of her black sequin dresses. She then disposed of his body.
Oh my god, this just gets worse and worse.
I know. Disposes of his body, this time into a different ditch about 8 miles away from where she'd left the first 2 victims. And now, because Kevin had a family, unlike Lucas or John, he was reported missing quite quickly. So his wife actually phones the police on the evening that he went missing to say that he had gone to visit some of the properties that he owned. He was going to do some work there and he hadn't returned home, and she'd been unable to get hold of him. So with his business partner, they both went out looking for Kevin and they were unable to find him. But she does tell the police that one of the properties she went to where she believed he might have been had all the lights on inside, but there was nobody there. So police take this quite seriously as they know it's out of character for him, and they begin their search at the property that Christina had said that there was lights on but there was nobody home. The property is actually emptied. It's like an unoccupied property, so when they get in there, they're not able to determine if there's been a struggle or if anything has gone on, but when they're doing their search they do notice that there's some spots of blood around. So immediately they decide that this could be a potential crime scene, and they vacate the property and call in the forensic investigators to come and have a little look around and process what could be a crime scene. The following morning, they actually receive a call from a farmer telling them that he had found a body on his property. When they arrive at the property, they find the body of Kevin Lee. He's still dressed in the black sequin dress, and police describe it as a very staged scene in what they feel was a final act of humiliation, as he is face down and the dress is being pulled up and leaving his buttocks exposed.
Oh, wow.
I know, it's not enough to kill him. She has to humiliate him as well. And, you think of everything that he's actually done for her. Like, she came out of prison, he helped her find a property when she had a criminal record, he'd helped lend her money, and she still killed him and completely humiliated him by how she left his body.
Yeah, it's a thing to do to someone that gives you kind of a lifeline, isn't it?
I know. So police identify the body to be that of Kevin Lee, and after telling his wife, they ask if she has any idea of anybody who might have wanted to hurt him. And she explains that Kevin had actually received some death threats from some of his tenants that he had as he was trying to evict him. So she gives him a list of people who she thinks could potentially be the killer. And when they're going through these lists and some phone records that she also supplied, they realise that there are 2 numbers on his phone records that were also in the same location where his body had been found. So immediately they think that this is a good start, and they try to identify who the phones belong to. The first phone is registered to Gary Stretch. So they realise that it's his, and the second number is unregistered. So they're trying to find out who owns the second phone. They go back to Kevin's business records and they search through everything, and they go through all of the tenant applications, and on one of the applications they find the second number that was found on his phone records, and this one belongs to Joanna Dennehy. So quickly the police realise that these are their two suspects that they need to be looking for, and they immediately begin a search. But at both of their addresses, they're unable to locate them, and this is because Joanne and Gary realise that they're being looked for, and they have now gone on the run. And they're hiding in Norfolk, and because they're desperate for money, while they're there, they embark on another spree of burglaries and contact a friend that lives in the area to try and help them sell the items. So while they're all in the car, driving around, trying to get rid of these items that they've sold, Joanne boasts to both of them that she has just recently killed 3 people. And instead of feeling any remorse, she's really excited and tells him that this is something that she wants to do again. She shouts at Gary to stop the car while he's driving, and she jumps out of the car, picks on a random stranger who happens to be a man named Robin Bariza, and she stabs him in the shoulder, leaving him on the floor on a pool of his own blood.
Wow, so it's always men as well.
It's always men. It's always men that she kills, yeah.
So she has an MO and it's men.
She does. Which is not strange, I don't think, but it's strange because when I was reading about some of her background, she developed a real hatred for her mother.
Oh.
So it's surprising that she took out all of her anger on men.
Yeah, you would think it would be like mother figures.
Mm.
You would think it would
But
be
it's
like anyone
not.
that's a mum or anyone that could be a mum, not the opposite of who she had the issues with in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay.
But everybody that she goes after are men. So she jumps back in the car, screaming at Gary to drive, and just 9 minutes later, she picks her 5th victim. So this is a man named John Rogers. He's 57 years old, and she runs out to him, screaming that she's going to kill him, and she stabs him over 30 times before getting back in the car and driving off again.
How does someone stab someone over 30 times and no one well, I don't know if anyone did see it, but no one intervenes or like sees it, or she's not like chased away from someone shouting or something? Because if I saw that, I probably wouldn't run over to it because, you know, scary, but I probably would like beat my horn or shout or
do anything
to get them away.
I think maybe somebody did shout or did intervene, and I'm not sure if that's what stopped her this time. And I also read that this 5th victim, John, had a dog with him, and she stole his dog when she got back in the car.
Wow, it's not enough that you've just stabbed him 30 times, but you're going to steal his dog as well. That poor dog as well.
Take his dog. I know. But police do get the dog back, and luckily both Robin and John amazingly survive.
Wow.
I'm really not sure after. I know, I'm not sure how after he was stabbed over 30 times, but they do. They both survive.
That's crazy. She must have just missed everything like that was fatal.
Everything vital. And he got quick medical attention, luckily. Back in Peterborough, police are obviously continuing their search, and this is when they start to question Leslie Layton. So Leslie is the other man that lives in the house with Joanne, and he's also the one that helped dispose of Lucas's body.
Yes.
And John's body. And while they're questioning Leslie, they notice that his phone rings continually, and they encourage him to answer it, but he declines. So immediately they become suspicious. They're wondering why he won't answer the phone. So they use phone records to search and find out whose number it is that's phoning, and they actually find out that the mobile number that is calling them belonged to John Chapman, which was Joanne's 2nd victim. So immediately they start thinking, what's going on? So at the time they don't realise that John is dead yet, but when they were doing a search of the house, they did find a lot of blood on his mattress, so they had been concerned about his whereabouts. So initially, when they see that he's ringing, they believe that it might be him and that he's okay and that he could have been involved. But they know that this is the lead that they need to follow. So they locate the mobile phone's location to be in Norfolk, and they issue Norfolk police a statement saying that they're looking for these particular people. So Norfolk police are on high alert, and a detective who is actually investigating a shoplifting offence recognises Joanna Dennehy on the CCTV of the shop that's been burgled. So he sends the police in Peterborough the footage, and they're able to determine the vehicle that both Joanne and Gary Stretch have been driving around in Peterborough, in Norfolk, sorry. So they issue ANPR with the registration number to try and catch both Joanne and Gary, and it works. And just that afternoon, they are intercepted and both of them are arrested. So they're taken back to the police station for questioning. And originally there's sort of concerns about Joanne's mental state, and they don't believe that she's fit for questioning. So she's actually sectioned for 28 days, where she undergoes some further testing for psychological disorders. And apart from the antisocial personality disorder that she'd already been diagnosed with the psychopathic traits, there's no further problems. So she's released back into police custody, and they begin their trial. So she admits to what they were doing, and there's actually a lot of police footage out there as well of her being questioned, and the police say that it's really shocking because she's not remorseful, and she is admitting to it, and she's sort of, I've watched some of the footage, she's like leaning over the police table, she's like flirting with them, and she's saying, oh, you're just the good cop and I'm the bad killer, and she's just absolutely not remorseful for anything.
That is crazy.
It's
It's
really
like
bizarre behaviour.
Yeah, like she's flirting, but yet everything she's done kind of shows us that she hates men. So why would she be flirting with them? Is that her way of getting her own way? And
she's actually described as like a lot of the men that have met her in her life as well. They say she's almost bewitching. Like a lot of people seem to sort of fall for her, and they'll do anything for her, which I think does kind of echo through definitely the first three people, because they were very willing to be around her and very willing to do things for her. And then you've got two other men as well who were willing to help her hide a body or cover for her in the police station, or, you know, lie under oath. It's crazy how somebody can sort of have that control over somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely strange. And Joanne was convicted. Leslie was convicted too, and Gary, but Joanne was actually the third female in the UK to receive a life sentence. I think the other one might have been like Myra Hindley and maybe Rose West. So the judge definitely took the sentence seriously, and when he was sentencing her, he described her as cruel, calculating, selfish, and a manipulative serial killer, and said that she would spend her whole life in prison with never being eligible for parole. So while she's still in prison, I have actually read that she still continues to be the same evil person, and she was actually found to try and break out of prison, and she was planning to sever the fingers of one of the guards in the prison, because they've got biometric doors that use fingerprints to open it. But luckily she was caught before she could carry this plan out.
Is she not like in a maximum security, can't go anywhere in her own cell? Or is she just in a normal prison where she roams with everyone else?
I don't think she's in a maximum security. I've read she's in a prison called Brunsfield, I think. So I'm not really sure what type of prison that is. I mean, you'd hope so, wouldn't you?
You would. And when she was, analysed and sectioned, did they realise anything was wrong? Because obviously, like you're saying, she's still acting the way she was before, so surely there has to be something wrong with her, or just pure evil.
I think they've just put it down to the antisocial personality disorder with narcissistic and psychopathic traits, and she's just acted on them. Despite being in prison for the actual horrific crimes that she has committed, she has managed to find love.
No.
While she's been behind bars.
This is one thing I'll never understand, and you hear it quite often with cases like this, especially ones that are like heavily in the press and stuff. And it starts with letters, and then you have like fans, and then they get married.
Yeah.
And I think, what kind of person is attracted to that kind of person who's in prison for murder, rape, kidnapping?
For some horrific crimes on men, and some men that she was sleeping with. And then you want to be a person that she's going to sleep with. I would just be living my life in terror.
Right.
If that was me. But yeah, she met a pen pal who she developed a romance with originally, and then secondly she also developed a romance with another one of the inmates, who has since told the media that they were planning to get married, and Joanne has told her that she has absolutely no remorse for the crimes that she committed.
Brilliant. Well, thank God that her children managed to get away when they did.
Yeah.
And thank God her ex-partner did as well, because he could have been one of her victims.
On the list, yeah.
He fits.
Yes.
He fits the bill, so why not? Wow. I don't know how
I never saw anything about her children either, so hopefully they've been kept well out of it.
Yes. I wonder if
it can't be nice having that.
Yeah, I wonder if they know that. How old did it say how old they were when they left?
I think from the dates that I was reading, they were probably under 5.
Okay. Well, hopefully the partner never told them who she was, so they never had to learn who she was.
Yeah, it's because that's.
But I can't believe I didn't know this story, and it's a UK story as well, which is a UK woman story, which is quite uncommon, like you said.
Yeah, and it's not that old either, is it?
No.
Back in 2013.
No, not that old at all, actually. So she's still... How old would that make her now?
So she was born in 82, so she'll be 41 this year.
41 this year. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, you can look online as well. There's actually lots of photos of her posing with the knife that she killed her victims with.
That also
quite provocatively.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That is wild as well, that she's used the same knife every time. Like, you would think that you'd just get rid of the murder weapon, but no. Kept it like kind of like a souvenir. As
she just didn't really care, did she? You know, you read a lot of murderers who try and get rid of the weapon so that they're not convicted, but she just carried it around with her.
Fine. Wow. That was... See, I just think you're really great at storytelling. Like that. I was hooked, and I hope you guys were too. I hope you enjoyed our second episode, and we would love to hear your thoughts. So leave a comment, leave a review, and also if you did want to make any suggestions, because we would love to open it up so that you guys could maybe choose a true crime, and it can be anything case, so it can be anything from missing persons to a serial killer. We would love to look into some that we maybe never heard of before that we could look into, because I think it's a lot more interesting when you're researching one that you don't necessarily know. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I do. It gets a bit samey when you hear the same ones over and over again, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So like there probably isn't a podcast out there that a true crime podcast at least that you can't listen to Jeffrey Dahmer or Ted Bundy. So we're trying to do the ones that are not so talked about or that you won't have seen before, because there are, on all these ones that we've heard of before, there'll normally be a documentary, a program, maybe even a film, some of them. So yeah, shine away from those ones. And yeah, so join us again next Monday, where we bring you episode 3, and episode 3 I'll be telling the story. So like I said, or like we said before, we'll be taking it in turns. So yeah, anything else to add?
Don't think so.
Okay, well, we will see you again, same time next week. Love you, bye!
Bye.